Greetings, saints of the beloved. I have an update from the Lord that I wanted to share with you today. I will remind you what the scripture says. Who hath believed our report, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? In this hour is God's chosen, his prophets, whom he has chosen, who he has prepared in advance to hear, to know, to understand, and to speak, declare, and prophesy the word of the Lord. So I have two visions that I want to share with you that I received last weekend. They were closed-eyed visions, and it has to do with current events and the things that have happened over the last year and the things that the Lord is doing now that he wants you to know, he wants you to be informed about. As I told you and informed you in previous videos, the Lord reveals himself unto me in various ways. Most times it's through dreams. Writing through here, it's numerically. At times I will have visions, particularly closed-eyed visions. It's visions when you're awake and you're seeing, but you're seeing when your eyes are closed only. And so the first vision that I had, I was laying in bed last Sunday, I believe it was. And it was just as I was waking up and before I got up out of bed to get up for good. I call this Chinese calligraphy. It happened on 10/30/21. By the way, today is the 14th of November, 2021. During this vision, my sight faded in to see what looked like a Chinese calligraphy scene. At first it was dim, then a small point expanded and brightened to allow me to see more clearly. It moved across the scene and was difficult to focus. The first thing I noticed was what looked like the scene written on papyrus. Chinese writing and a bird or two and an insect. I went in and out of the vision a few times because it was a closed-eyed vision and I was frustrated at the lack of visibility at certain points. But I believe there was reason for this. The last time I came back into the vision, the scene was mostly dim and had zoomed in close. Now I was only able to make out possibly a forest while the scene continued to experience movement. That was the end of that particular vision. Immediately after that vision, I closed my eyes and I had this next vision, and I call it the ancient stone wall, also on 10/30/2021. During this vision, I saw from a distance a large ancient stone wall. I can't say definitely what culture it was built by, but it seemed European. There were engraving and formations on the wall that had over time and centuries worn away. They were still clearly seen, but not with the original definition. Then the dream zoomed in tight. I was in close, but again, it was dim. I couldn't see the details clearly. So I opened and closed my eyes a few times, hoping the images would clear up. They didn't get any clearer. The scene began moving me upward along the face of the wall at a rapid pace. I shut my eyes and it ended the vision. These two visions go together, and after thinking, praying over these two visions, I understood that it was speaking about current events. And so the Lord wanted me to inform everyone that would hear this about what is going on in our country, what is going on in our culture, and what is going on in our government. As I was telling you about the first dream was written on papyrus, ancient papyrus, and there were, it was the scene that I described to you, a Chinese scene with nature. It was depicting Chinese culture, Chinese nature, Chinese village, And then the dream moved me around, and I saw a forest. The second dream had to do with, let me, the meaning to these two dreams. It has to do with the Chinese government overriding our culture and our ways, our laws, and our ways of living. And so the Lord gave me this vision to make us aware that all the things that we're seeing going on as it relates to Chinese culture, more Chinese visibility in our movies, our commercials. You'll notice that there are more Chinese people in the scenes of our commercials, more Chinese movies made, and the themes are pushing Chinese philosophy. There's Chinese products. We've always said Chinese products, but there's been a serious uptick since the election. And it's because the Chinese government is pushing their philosophy, their ideas, their ways of living, their culture, and overriding American culture. That was what the second dream was. The ancient wall that had carvings and formations and engravings on the wall that over time had worn away. That represents the American government. From the time that our nation was formed until now, gradually, our ways, our culture, especially after this election, have been gradually worn away, have been chipped away over time, so that now American culture, or American ideas, or American ways of living is not as defined as it once was. So if you didn't know, and you weren't aware, you thought that these things were happening just by happen chance, or for some odd reason, maybe there's just been an influx of Chinese interest, just because the world's advancing at a rapid pace. It's not because of that. It's intentional, as I said in my last video, hijacked. It is calculated. It's intentional. This is what they're doing, without ever having to fire a gunshot, or whatever, without ever having gone on a physical battlefield with tanks and planes and ships and all those things. They are doing it through our culture. Now, I want you to know, this video is not intended, nor did God intend, for to speak specifically about Chinese people. Chinese people and Chinese government, two different things. Chinese people are not responsible for this. The Chinese government, the communist, Marxist, socialist government, is trying to overwrite our American culture, our ideas, our ways of living, our laws, and the way we're governed. The Lord wants you to know that this is not the course that He has blessed, nor is His hand in the doings of these things. The Lord wants us to fight. He wants us to know, first of all, and wants us to fight and stand up against what the Chinese government is. I don't want anybody to focus their attention, or nor does the Lord want us to focus our attention on the Chinese people. One thing also that we've noticed is a huge influx of Chinese people coming into our country, just especially students, many of whom may be those who they want to have their education here so that they can take seats in important places of our culture and government to influence the course of our culture, how we're governed for the Chinese government. However, the Lord does not want us to focus on the Chinese people. They themselves in China have an underground church, millions of them, being controlled and told by the Chinese government how to believe, what to believe, when to believe. The Chinese people as a whole do not agree with their government, and that's why they're suppressed. And they're trying to bring that here. What are we going to do? We bring these ideas, but how are we respond? What do we do about it? I'm going to share those things. As soon as I can find it. All right. So, what do we do to combat all that I've just been speaking about, the things that the Lord wants us to know? First of all, we don't fight against flesh and blood. Ephesians 6, we fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers of the air, wickedness in high places. So what you can do, what we can do, what I can do is in prayer, take the authority that the Lord Jesus gave us, pull down those strongholds. You talk about petition the Lord to pull down those strongholds, or I should say, you take authority, pull down those spiritual strongholds, all these powers, principalities, and spiritual wickedness that is influencing the officials of our government, as well as the collusion from other nations, especially the CCP, to cut the cords of influence. There are spiritual cords which the enemies, these powers and rulers of wickedness, have attached themselves either by influence or by cooperation with those who have been consulted with them, to cut their cords of influence so that they can no longer be influenced by principalities and powers and these rulers. That's number one. Pull down those strongholds, because it's not really the people that we're fighting against, it's the spirit powers. Secondly, get a copy of the Constitution. We have a copy of the Constitution, and we are familiarizing ourselves with what our Constitution says and what our rights are as citizens of the United States of America. Familiarize yourselves with the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and all branches of our government and how they work together. Know what your rights are as Americans, so that you can discern the difference between what they're pushing and what our rights are as Americans. Elect officials that value and uphold the Constitution, regardless of party. When it's time for our elections, for presidential elections, for judges, for Congress, for House of Representatives, all of them elect. Get to know these people who are running. As you become aware of what our rights are as citizens of these in the United States of America, elect officials that uphold these values. By doing these things, we patch those broken and worn walls and bring clarity and definition to what it is to be in America. So as we're doing these things, as I said, that the ancient stone wall represented America. So we do these things, we're repatching that wall that was erected to defend ourselves against tyranny, against ideas and philosophies that would come in to muddy up our ways of living, our ways of being governed. And we by patching them up, we define and redefine and make clear who we are as Americans, of what we are all about and how we're going to live. We will not be overtaken. We will not be fooled. We will not be deceived by anything or anyone that comes and tries to tear that wall down. No culture on this planet will be able to do it if we stand our ground, if we align with God, and if we do all to defend our nation, our land, and our country. Before I close out, I wanted to tell you about some of the things that I'll be doing in the upcoming videos. There's something the Lord revealed to me about a great exposure coming in medicine. Those hands that are pulling the strings and what they have been doing behind the scene, that's coming up. And I have a video coming up about what this channel is all about, the season of this fight, and what it is to be, what it is that will be accomplished. I want to remind you, like, share, and subscribe. Turn off the pagan news and turn on God news. I love you, and the Lord loves you.